Good evening, everyone. I apologize for the late start. It was just a late day. Look at Chief Bells. Yay. Woohoo. You're a little early. You're a little bit early. We do rules and public policy first, and we do public safety at 7:30. But you are more than welcome to hang around with us, and so we can, because we're talking about your levy. So, but it starts at that part. You're muted there, Brian. You have to unmute yourself.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
All right. Yeah, I'll just hang out then if you don't mind.
I do not mind. Thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate that. Let's see, try to turn my volume up a little bit because my son is washing the dishes. Thank you, son. Okay, so I just sent the agenda and the meeting minutes out at probably, I know what time it was 6:18 because I forwarded them to Ms. Hall. So I'm sure you haven't had a chance to review those. I owe you meeting minutes from January, but I think that's from the other committees. So I will just ask you to review those for next time, if you will. There's not a lot to talk about in this particular meeting, I think, maybe. I guess we'll see how it goes. So the legislation, there's none for this particular committee, Rules and Public Policy. Old business, legislative procedure. So we have Mr. Miller Novak here. Don't mean to put you on the spot, sir, but you suggested that we have a process for legislative procedure. And it just so happens that every member of council is in this committee. How great is that? So we can.
Yeah, I mean, is that true?
Yes, there's 6 of us in this committee, and there are 6 of us on council right now. So yes, we're all here. Gang's all here.
No. Let's see.
Technically speaking, Miss Bailey's term is not up yet,
Oh, okay.
but yes.
Matt, you have the floor.
I do. Well, I didn't prepare anything tonight. Well,
It was just
okay.
what you think, how you think we should handle. What we were talking about, I think, was how we should handle when we want the law director to draft something for us, like how we should communicate with him, all of those things.
Well,
That's what I'm calling legislative procedure.
Right. I think the one thing we just don't do is just even have them look at anything and everything as it goes through readings. I mean, everything has 3 readings, and at any point in 3 readings, things can be amended, corrected, edited. So, we can talk about an actual procedure, but the important thing is that we often just don't bother with it. Like we never even send things to them. And if you look at the rules, well, I wouldn't say rules, actually Ohio law. I mean, technically speaking, a law director is supposed to basically certify the review of legislation and the process. So, it's not about the law director necessarily writing it. It's about making sure that it's at least thrown across his desk somewhere in the 3 reading process before it is passed. Obviously a handful of our legislation comes from the state and things like that, right? Sometimes a couple of edits need to be made, but sometimes, the administration might draft our legislation. Sometimes, members of council can draft legislation. So anywhere in that process of the 3 readings, you know, we really shouldn't be passing anything with a lot, at least letting, you know, the law director take a look at it to make sure, you know, I don't know, just a general read. I mean, we could be passing things that somehow are unlawful, constitutionally speaking or otherwise. We could be just passing things that have mistakes in them, or, you know, we could be rehabbing legislation from the past that was fine and functional 3 years ago, but some change in law might have occurred in the last 3 years. And, you know, assuming that law is still good or something we did a few years ago, especially when it involves things like real estate, or other issues. I mean, we should make sure that the law director just has it presented to him in the process. Like, I don't know that I have a particular recommendation of procedure as much as just the goal of review. And I don't know if it's just like some kind of check off the box process or something like that. But it's just not being done. That's dangerous. That's it. I mean, don't get me wrong. In a normal world, again, I mean, it's one of the things that we made a decision on, is that we decided not to have law director present at every meeting. We'll have to pay for it. I mean, that was something that was discussed, is whether or not we would find extra money in the budget to pay to have the law director present at every meeting. If we did that, then, you know, the law director would always be present to see this stuff as it's read and passed through. But because we're not paying for that service, we need to take the affirmative steps to make sure that happens. That's it. That's all I really got as a goal.
I have kind of a question. So this is more like of a logistical question. Would this be more of like a actual legislation that we pass to get legislative procedure, or would it just be something that we're like suggesting for the other committees to use / ourselves to use?
Well, mechanically, Marjorie, I think we would use council rules to do it. I don't think we'd pass like an ordinance or anything. So, you know, ordinances are kind of like a city's law, right? And council rules are kind of like council's agreed upon procedure for doing its business, if that makes sense.
So Matt, what I heard you say was that the law director needs to see the legislation at least at some point during the 3 readings. But my concern with that is there are some members of council that don't feel 3 readings are necessary. So how do we make certain that he sees it before it goes to the final reading?
Well, that's a good question. You know,
I only ask
again,
good questions.
I mean, that's a good one. You know, I mean, yeah, obviously sometimes we do suspend readings because of time, but generally speaking, someone has an idea that that's going to occur, or someone has an idea that they're going to recommend it. So, you know, I mean, the other thing you could do, you know, Mary Jo, is like, you know, no laws. I don't know. We might need to bring the law director into that question in a sense of, there is that 10-day period before the mayor signs it, right? You know, maybe we just have, in the cases where we do that, we send it to law director to make sure that it doesn't need to be amended, because just in case. But I would hope that if someone has the idea that they might motion to suspend readings, or if the administration has an idea that they're going to request, that we do that as a council, because it's time sensitive, that whatever person's planning on doing that would take the initiative to reach out to the law director and ask for a review. And then when they recommend suspending readings, again, whether or not this person's on council or the administration, that they can say, and I've submitted it to the law director. I did ask Bill to check it out. He checked it out, said it looks fine. I mean, that would be my hope.
Okay, so it just sounds like we probably need to make sure that the law director is included in that process for every resolution and every ordinance. But we probably need to discuss and add that to the council rules. And it just so happens that council rules are on the agenda today. Yay. Nobody finds that funny.
We're just muted. We're laughing and mute.
I have a question actually. To add something to council rules, like how do we just kind of say like, okay, we're gonna add it and then it happens, or like how do we do that?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Marjorie. So
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you want to get it, Erica? I'm sorry.
Mr. Miller Novak can explain how we amend them, but I'm going to suggest that we have a committee of the whole meeting, if everyone is okay with that, so that we can specifically look at our council rules and fix, what needs to be fixed, and we can do it as an entire council. I think the last time the rules were amended, I think Mr. Oh goodness. I'm blanking on his name. Yes, Mr. O'Shea. Mr. O'Shea just kind of made a motion during like a council meeting to make certain amendments to the council rules. And he had discussed them with the committee. The problem is that not all of the members of council were on the committee. So not everyone got to have input, I think, before he motioned to make those changes during the council meeting. If we just do a committee of the whole meeting where everybody on council is at the committee meeting, then we can kind of go through all of the rules and, figure out what needs to be fixed and fix them. I think now Matt can further explain how that works, because I've never done that before. So I just read the rules, and
You
that
kind of
appears
answered
to
my
be-
question. If Matt wants to save his breath, it's just with like a motion basically.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm sorry, I got a call coming in. I don't know what that just did to what I was talking about, but she's right. I mean, there's no exact procedure that has to be done, but it has to be motioned and approved by all of council. We can't do it as a committee. We can just, typically speaking, this committee would make the recommendations for changes, and then all of council would vote on them. But honestly, Erica, if 6 members are on this committee, is it necessary to have a committee of the whole meeting, or just discuss it in this committee?
That's a good question. What does everybody think?
I don't know what you have planned for the next rules and public policies meeting, but would we rather just kind of use that time to discuss it, and then the council meeting after that, we kind of then motion to amend or change or add or whatever?
Okay, I think that's a good idea. What does everybody else think?
I'm flexible. I'll go with the flow.
I'll go with that. I'm flexible as well.
Marjorie, I'd like to add a little explanation that I'm not sure I heard from either Eric or Matt. So as a whole, we're going to meet and talk about all of the council rules, and we'll put it all together in one document and then bring it to council chambers, and somebody will motion and we'll vote on it whether or not we accept that entire document. But the other thing that Erica started to go into, and I'm not sure she finished, Jim O'Shea, we talked about council rules in a committee meeting, and there were 1 or 2 things just like 1 or 2 line items that needed to change. So he made a motion during a council meeting and we just changed those particular line items and not the entire document. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
So Ms. Zorb, do you want to just figure this out at our next committee meeting?
Yeah, sorry, I was giving you a thumbs up. I was,
Oh, okay, I wasn't paying attention. I was typing.
Okay.
Okay.
yeah.
Beth, what do you think? Oh, you said you were gonna go with the flow. Okay, I remember that. Ms. Blythe, what about you?
That sounds good for me.
So I will make sure that Mr. Graver is present for the next Rules and Public Policy meeting. I'll invite him to attend as well so that we can kind of go through the rules. And if we, Matt, are we allowed to send each other email just as long as we don't just reply all, just with the suggested edits or changes to those rules?
That's a little risky because I mean, like making suggestions and exchanging suggestions kind of probably steps into the realm of deliberation. I don't know that I would do that.
Okay. I just don't know how we can communicate like what, ahead of time, what we should be, like what I would want everybody to look at.
Well, I mean, I think it's not, I mean, if you're actually doing substantive amendments to the rules, I would not expect anybody to believe this is going to be a one meeting thing. It just depends, right? I think what we might want to do is just have everybody bring any amendments that they suggest to the next meeting for us to deliberate on them then.
And Erica, if there are sections that you want us to concentrate on, you can certainly send that to all of us. And
Okay.
we would know which I mean, just don't include maybe your ideas, just say, look at section 3 and come up with ideas, or, you know what I mean? Just something
Yes,
like that.
that makes sense. Is that okay, Matt? Can we do that?
Yeah, you could organize it. One person is allowed to say something. It's just if one person says something on a topic and then another person says something on the same topic and so on and so forth, that's when you walk into the danger zone.
Okay.
Madam Chair, that was going to be my question too, as which issues should we focus on that need revising? So I think, an email with certain topics, that would be great. I was getting ready to ask you, what areas are people concerned with? Thank you.
And I actually, since we have a 5th Monday in the month of March, I think what I will do is take that time that we would normally meet on that Monday and work on that and send you guys an email so that you have like most of the month to look at those rule sections. Yeah. Okay. Let me see. We'll put that under action items. Okay. Does anybody else have anything else about the council rules?
I don't know if this would be like including council rules, but I know like when Miss Blythe and I were joining council, there was discussion of like kind of getting a more organized onboarding system. I don't know if that would be separate of council rules or included, but if we kind of want to just note that somewhere.
You seem to go through council members a lot. Okay. I will make sure I include that. It's in the minutes. I will make sure I include that as well. So does anybody else have anything else to add about that? Okay, so under old business, also I have process for committee meeting minutes and agendas. I went up to the council chambers and I looked at what was supposed to be all of our meeting agendas and meeting minutes. And notice I say what was supposed to be because it was not organized. The file cabinets are falling apart. You know, some of them are broken. The drawers don't open. There's no dividers in there. It was just just a public record nightmare or tragedy waiting to happen. We are one public records request away from, big trouble. That's how I'll describe it. It was not, it's not okay. So I have an idea. I have some ideas, but I'd like to hear some ideas about how we can fix that.
I'm all ears.
It's an idea. I'll just tell you that I asked for the little rack thingies to go in those files probably 5 years ago and haven't received them yet. It's probably on me because I didn't follow up and nag somebody to death, and because I didn't.
Not on you.
I just expected it to happen and never did. I finally pulled stuff out of my file cabinet and brought it up there. And so the stuff that you saw came from my personal inventory or whatever you want to call it. And that's what's up there now.
I think it's called a scanner. And electronic storage, you know, because I'll defer to Marjorie, but isn't that what people do nowadays?
Well, yeah, because I know at the, I don't remember if it was a Rules and Public Policy Committee or a regular council meeting, but when we were kind of talking about this, people were apprehensive to just have digital copies. I know the reasons, but I don't remember the specific reasons that people said. But so I don't know. I feel like that would just be kind of going down the same road. And I mean, if we're going to spend the money, I feel like we wouldn't really need at this point to spend the money to get a scanner because most of the stuff that we do is digital anyway. We would just basically just need to like send it to somebody who would then put it on a drive or whatever.
Both of the copiers that are in the caucus room both have scanning capability, so I don't think we would need to buy one.
Yeah.
I think where you were going at the beginning, that where we fell down was individuals would have documents in Google Docs, and then when those individuals were no longer employees, then we couldn't get to those documents, so they were basically lost. So unless we found a central repository for that everyone could always get to, I would stay away from the digital market. I mean, as far as I know, everyone can still go read a piece of paper, and I don't think that's really out of the question.
They have like OneDrives and stuff, or you can get like.
Right, but that again, there's a fee associated with that, and there's no fee associated with putting a piece of paper in a drawer.
Now, Ms. Zorb and Ms. Anderson, now that you mention it, I talked to Ms. Duwald about this briefly. And she is supposed to have a meeting with someone who has there's a central repository. I'm using your words, Ms. Zorb, for cities and governments to keep these kinds of documents. So I was going to attend that meeting with her. I think it would just be a database that would be maintained by the city administration. Obviously, we would need to get all of those archived documents in there, but it would just be a matter of, once everything is in there, just clicking to print, just to print those documents out if somebody requested them. And also just with regard to the paper copies, having paper copies for people who want, I don't know that we, how we feel about just not having paper copies, because, Ms. Orb, it was just, if that was just what you left up there, thank you for leaving that. But I was just kind of dismayed that, yeah, that I was very just dismayed about the whole thing.
Well, and I'll even put a caveat on that. When I say I put stuff up there, I selfishly only took care of my own committee. I did not take care of everyone else's committee. I put my committee minutes up there and agendas up there.
Right.
So I can't speak for the other committees.
Yeah, it is terrible. I'm saying terrible. I probably shouldn't keep saying that, but it's definitely something that I want to fix. So, if we have a digital repository, it needs to be a central digital repository, and then maybe the clerk of council has access to it. So the clerk could then print the request and print the documents that someone requests. Of course, we have to make sure those documents are in that repository. I don't know how we're going to do that, but at least if we have a repository, we can do that. My understanding is, and I don't want to dip into you guys' committee because I'm going to send that, but my understanding is that council actually has a budget, and I don't know how that works. So, well, it's kind of related to this. So how does that work, Ms. Orr, like the council budget? Like, do we have any input on how council's budget is spent, or is it just a line item called council budget and we have no input on how that's spent?
We 100% have control of the council budget. We do what we think is best for the city with our budget. I mean, I don't know what you're asking me. The answer is yes.
Okay.
If Airy Hall says we have money out there, then we can decide what to do. If we want to buy file cabinets, if we want to have a digital central repository, it is council's decision.
Okay. So just about that, just a further question about that. Can somebody else kind of take our budget and do what they want with it, or do we have how's that work?
Well, the way I understand the charter, it says we control the purse strings is the slogan I always hear. I mean, we decide what money gets spent where. So I'm not sure where you're going with this, but
I'm just asking general questions. I'm just trying to understand kind of how all this stuff works. I'm without asking a leading question, I'm asking an open-ended question. I'm just trying to understand how it works.
I'm sorry, may I answer?
This group of people has that final say so by an appropriation is the way I think that's the answer you're looking for, but maybe Ms. Hall has a different answer.
Okay, Ms. Hall?
So when we put the budget together, council has already appropriated line item spending. So if you're wanting to get filing cabinets, we would just have to make sure you have enough budget to cover that. If council decides to appropriate additional monies, we would have to determine where we would get those additional monies from. Would we reduce someone else's budget or how that would look? But right now, I mean, I don't have your budget in front of me, but I can definitely sit down with any one of you during the workday to go over that if you would like.
Okay, so Ms. Hall, I have a follow-up question for you. So the copier that was purchased, and I understand we need a copier, I agree, but it was purchased and nobody asked if we wanted that copier, if we wanted to lease it or whatever. It just was leased and it comes out of council's budget. So is that like held against us for when we decide that there's something we want to do, or how does that work?
Well, I don't.
Like, so if we only have $100 in the council budget and, you know, the copier machine was purchased or leased for $90, so now there's only $10 left in the council budget. Are we then limited to $10 even though we didn't decide to spend the first 90?
Yes and no. So yes, you have reduced your budget to the $10 because that lease payment's coming out. But then no, because I could present to you a supplemental appropriation after looking through all of the budget to see if there's places where I don't think we'll spend money. But at the way that the last budget went, we are very lean, so there really isn't any extra money anywhere. But if I look at it and see we've, you know, had extra revenue and we could probably afford X amount of dollars, then we could do a supplemental to increase your budget so that you can cover that cost. Or we could split the cost between administration and council. It just depends on what we're looking at. And I can provide a more detailed scenario once I know exactly what council wants to do, and I can provide a better answer. This is just generally speaking, you know, so.
Okay, so what I suggested to, and I'm talking just kind of to all of the members of the committee at this point, what I suggested to Ms. DeWald was that we hire someone part-time to go and track down all of our meeting minutes that we're required to have, our meeting minutes, committee meeting agendas, council meeting minutes, council agendas, however far we're supposed to go back. How far back is that, Matt? Are we supposed to be able to go back to the beginning of time or just a certain number of years?
Well, you got to look at our specific records policy. So it's not, time is not like a creature of statute. So the Open Records Act requires us to create a reasonable policy, and that includes
Such a
retention.
lawyer answer. I just.
Well, it's the real answer, man. Like we have to have.
We have a records and retention policy, Erica.
There you go.
Okay.
Right,
We
and
do.
that's what the answer is located. Right, it's the records like retention policy and all that stuff. So the law requires you to create a reasonable policy, and the law doesn't give you the policy in the statute. So we just have to find our specific policy. But again, that is something that we can amend as time goes on as well, right? Just like council rules, we can adjust our records policy. Because the only thing I'm concerned about is, you know, and I'm glad you mentioned maybe the idea of hiring someone part-time if we have the money to do it, because it doesn't matter if it's electric or you buy filing cabinets. If the people don't put them in the cabinets and they don't put them on stuff, then, you know, God knows what happens to it. I mean, I know when I was running this committee before, when we were meeting in person, I always had meeting minutes, and at the end, and I would execute them, and I had a part where I put a signature on it, and I always put it in the clerk's mailbox. And you know, I don't know, you know, prior to Mrs. DeWald, I don't know what happened to that. You know what I mean? I can only assume that the clerk took it and put it in the right place, or a place that, would make it producible. But, that's a leap of faith. So it's devices and systems are great, but people are more important at the end of the day.
What does everybody else think about that?
I'm kind of thinking, I don't know, I could be wrong, but from like kind of two standpoints, where you guys were talking about the money and how it would like obviously cost money to like get a system to save all this on and whatnot. I don't know, I could be wrong, but I feel like over time, even if we paid for a system, I feel like over time it would probably be cheaper to do that if you're looking at it from like a purely money standpoint. Because I mean, you're not spending money on the paper and then the time to file and then the time to go in and look for it, and you're not, spending time in a committee talking about how the filing's really bad and whatnot. And then on another kind of level, you're also looking at more of a sustainable environmentally standpoint, and I think that looks good for NCH either way. And I mean, I think that's important too, but I don't know. I also understand the point. I'd much rather, trust a human being going in there and putting it in its pretty spot. But I think that, obviously we can hire a person to go in there and make sure that that computer program's organized. And I think that Misty Ewald would do fine with the computer program. Once, I think everything's at a learning curve. So I don't know. I mean, I'm fine with either one, honestly, but that's just my 2 cents. And obviously I'd rather lean towards the digital, but that might just also be my age. So I'm open to other things.
I'm
So
older than you, and I agree with digital. But one thing I can tell you, Erica, like what I see other communities do, I mean, because, I come across this constantly. I'm constantly requesting public records from numerous municipalities. Most nowadays are using their website, truth be told. They're
Okay.
not storing these things at hard drives or anything like that, or the cloud. It's just that is everybody's method nowadays of doing it, because then they're like self-producible, right? So if you
Right.
get in the habit of having meeting minutes and archiving them, like, you have a pay, all school boards do it for the most part. School boards have this thing called board docs, which is kind of this software that 95% of the school boards I've seen nowadays are using board docs. They use it to post their agendas. Then they fill out meeting minutes, and then the meeting minutes are all on this software that's like linked into everybody's web page in terms of school boards. I see that constantly.
Okay.
Most cities just archive them, so they'll have a spot on their website that, it's usually like city council, and if you click on that, you see in the sub menu to say meeting minutes, and you go to meeting minutes. And some cities are a little bit more organized than others, where it breaks it down by the committees, or whether other ones are just like, whatever the hell happens in a row. Like, so it'll be, if September had, one council meeting, a special meeting, it's like, and then one committee meeting, it's just like the stuff's just like blown up there by date, but nonetheless, it's all there. And then when you request public records, I mean, because I do it all the time, like, hey, I need your meeting minutes from this year and this year. They usually say, well, we could produce them, but they're also readily available to you on the website right now. And that's what most communities are doing. They're just using their website to store their meeting minutes and produce them all in the same shot.
Okay, so what I was actually suggesting was just the person I was suggesting to hire would be the person who goes back and organizes all of the agendas and minutes for whatever the record retention policy is, gets those scanned in, or whatever we need, whatever we decide we're going to do, make sure that they're all on the website up to the current date. And then after that date, the rest of us can just download them onto the website, or whatever the process is. I mean, I just think because all of mine are digital, and if there was a place I could put them digitally, I would put them there. I could put them there I could put them all there right now, but I mean, there's just, I don't know, that's what I'm talking about. Just kind of whatever however far back our record retention policy is about these documents, we need to get that figured out, because that room is terrible.
Erica, one thing we need to look into if we start looking at putting the stuff on the website, because still we don't have that server. I mean, we pay somebody for hosting. So we need to find out if they have a maximum storage limit on, I think it's Civics Plus. So we need to find out what their limit is to what we can put out there.
Okay.
And it might even be a thing where like we put so many years back onto the website and then have, if we had, like, let's say we had to 15 years back, we can only host 10 years on the website. We put 10 years on the website and say for the last, 5 years, go to whatever or contact whoever. But at least, it'd be better than having everything in a mess or having
Right.
nothing. And so I think also, kind of on a separate point, I think that it would be fine to hire somebody, because I mean, we hire somebody part-time once, we get it done, and then we don't have to deal with it anymore.
Right. I agree. I just want to get it organized in some kind of way. I don't care how it's organized. I can go with that. I just want it to be organized. And I think digital would be easiest, but we just need to figure that out, whatever that is. And I know that the budget is lean. I understand that, but not being able to respond to a public records request would make us even more lean. I think, because that's a really easy taxpayer lawsuit, right? Am I right about that, Matt?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I like to think what I do is extremely difficult and no one else is going to be able to do it as well. But no, in all actuality, it depends. I mean, it can be expensive if you're a stubborn idiot and want to fight over doing something wrong. I mean, theoretically speaking, someone, catches you with your pants down doing something wrong, you could also just call their attorney and be like, all right, I screwed up. How do I settle the case? What are your attorney's fees? Let's get it done really cheap. So the answer to that question depends on how stupid you are once you've been caught doing something wrong.
Okay.
Madam
Well,
Chair.
I think
Madam Chair.
yes, I heard a woman say, Madam
That was
Chair. Who
me.
said that?
That was me.
Okay, Ms. Hall.
Just for clarification, this is a temporary part-time hire to do the duties of a clerk?
So yes and no. It's not really the duties of a clerk. It's more of, because that person would have to organize what we actually have into something we don't have yet. Potentially scan documents and get them all in there, get them all organized, and then track down the people who may have the agendas and meeting minutes that are missing from whatever that time period would be. But yes, I envision a part-time temporary position, because once everything is organized, it should be easy enough for us to keep it that way, because we'll, kind of incorporate that into the rules, like, you have to do it this way. But, for now, it's just, we don't have anything. So I'm just trying to brainstorm to try to figure out how to get us to where we need to be. That was just my suggestion.
Okay. And so just one more question. So this is not something you're planning for the 2021. This is something that we need to be looking at for the 2022 budget to plan for?
Not necessarily. I'm just trying to figure out I just want us to get, I would just want us to get our stuff fixed, because if we do have a public records request for example, for the time that I've been committee chair, it's a mouse click. I can respond to it. I'm good with that. But I just want us all to be good with any public records request. So I just want all of those documents to be neat and orderly, and they're not right now. So I don't know what that looks like. I'm just trying to figure out how we can fix this problem.
Erica,
Yes.
Whoop.
I think that I got to talk to Bill about it, but there is a little bit of debate in law whether or not I think it's possible that we could designate our committee videos as our official record, and that would satisfy the open meetings. Because there's two issues, right? How you keep meeting minutes and whether or not that methodology complies with the Open Meetings Act. And then the Open Records Act is the production of that record. So the two are not mutually exclusive. There is overlap, but there might be a way to use the videos lawfully. I haven't seen a community do it yet, but there's a couple cases just as possible. So it's something that I want to talk about with Bill Dieters. But in the meantime, in the
And I
past,
put that as an action item that you will discuss with Mr. Dieters, whether we could.
yeah, actually, I will, because it's come up a lot in my cases. And I've looked at some case law that suggests it's possible, but it would have to be done in a very particular manner, and I think it could be done. And if he's confident that I'm right, then it's possible, and that might solve the problem moving forward in a much cheaper fashion if we're already paying ICRC. And it's just but then there's also the idea of maintenance of those records. We might have to alter our records retention policy to account for the number of years and stuff like that. Like we have to check with ICRC and how long they maintain those videos as well. So there's a lot of dependency for it to even be possible.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
so I wanted to, sorry, I was a little late, but I wanted to provide some clarity based on what you said. So to follow up on what Mr. Miller-Novak was saying, first of all, as I'm looking at the records retention policy, meetings of minutes, the records retention period is permanent. And if I go to,
Oh man.
if I go to council records, it says, well, that's charters and amendments are permanent. The index to any resolutions or ordinances is permanent. And then probably the only other closest one might be reports to council, and that says 5 years, at least according to ours. But the other point that I was going to make to follow up with what Mr. Miller-Novak was saying, when ICRC, after they record our meetings, they do send us a DVD. I know of the council meetings. Now that may have to change if for some reason we're looking for that for committee meetings, because I don't believe we get those for committee meetings, but I know that we do get them for the council meetings. So the point that I'm making there is even if they erase them, or if they have a storage limit, we still have a copy of our official meetings that's on the DVD.
Okay.
We
fair
might
enough.
need to amend our records policy. I mean, permanent, somewhat ridiculous. Like that's insane. So we might talk to Bill and just ask him what he thinks the average is. I mean, I would think the average is probably about six years or so. 'Cause I think that the record statute limitations 6 years, I think, off the top of my head. So
Ron,
might
did you
want-
send that to all of us? Ron? Can anybody hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, I'll have to scan it in and I can email it.
Thank you.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I just wanted to let you know in case you weren't looking. It's 7:27.
Okay.
Carrie, it's your committee. I just wanted
Yeah.
to.
No, thank you. It's our committee. It's our committee. So yes, thank you very much for that. So it looks like we're gonna continue to discuss that, and I'm happy that we've opened a dialogue, and we'll figure out how to get that fixed. Is there any new business for this committee? Okay, I'm seeing Mr. Miller Novak go unmute, so, but he didn't say anything. Okay, so not hearing any new business for this committee, I am, we'll just continue to work on that, and hope, we will get something figured out, and we'll continue to discuss it and get it figured out. I will go to that meeting with Mr. Wald. So it looks like that's about it. So we're gonna adjourn the meeting. It's 7:28, and public safety is just set to start in 2 minutes. So we just have a 2-minute break, I guess. Thank you.
Oh, wait, am I still on clock technically? If I'm,
Well, have you sent in the meeting? Yes.
yeah. Okay. 'Cause I started a timer when you first sat me down.
I hope all those dishes are finished and put away.
He washed them all, but he's of the air dry.
I can't say I blame them because I am right.
Okay, so I'm not, who's our host today? I don't see that because of my view. Are we ready to start?
Good to go.
Okay, wonderful. Good evening and welcome to the Public Safety Committee meeting. And I apologize for getting the agenda to you so late today, but I literally walked in, I think I told you guys this, walked in the house at 5:45. So I apologize. Walked in the house, and so I got it to you as quickly as I could. I did send you the February meeting minutes, but I'll give you an opportunity to review those, and I'll ask if we have any corrections to those at our next meeting. I'm still working on the January meeting minutes. That was quite a long meeting, so I just needed to, I need to continue to work on those. I have two people named Ryan Tran. Why do I have two Ryan Trans?
One is Blaylock, Eugene Blaylock.
Oh, okay. I
I'm
thought it
sorry.
was you, but I was like, why do I have two?
I
Okay.
know. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Hopefully it's okay. I'm here.
Yes, it's perfectly fine. Okay, so let's see. So that's about the minutes. I did send you all the fire levy resolution to proceed, which I received today. So I don't want you guys to think I was slacking and didn't send it to you. And the auditor certificate of estimated property value. So I think that Mr. Mosby is here, right? Yes?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so do you want to talk about this, what we're looking at here and what this means?
Certainly, yes, ma'am. So I think I have stated, but I'll review just very quickly. In order for council to put any kind of a levy issue on the ballot, it has to go through a two-step process. And the first step was done when council did pass the resolution to certify the amounts and the rates. And so that is what the Hamilton County Auditor did. And they sent that back to us, as you pointed out. Then the law office drafted what is called the resolution to proceed. That needs to be passed, and then that is sent to the Board of Elections, who will then send the entire package up to the state of Ohio. So in essence, the certification is basically telling us a couple of things. Number one, what our property valuation is as of the most recent property valuation. And we just had one this past, in essence, December. And then what amount such millage would raise for us in real estate tax revenue, which is the approximately 1.5 million that you see on the certificate.
Hey, I know everybody got lots of questions. What questions do we have?
I guess the only other thing, Madam Chair, I mean, again, I can, go through the timeline, which would be necessary, which is in order for us to have an issue placed on the ballot for November the 2nd, it has to be submitted to the Board of Elections no later than April the 4th, which is 90 days prior to the election. So, but obviously, did I say August the 4th? I thought I did.
You said April.
Okay, I'm sorry. August the 4th.
Okay.
Which is approximately 90 days, which is 90 days before the election.
I don't mean to be quiet. I just don't have any questions. That's just a big jump of money. So it's just kind of a processing thing.
Okay. When you say that's a big jump of money, what do you mean?
Yeah, I mean, just to go to like 95 to 420. I mean, that's a big jump for sure. But I mean, I think it's necessary either way. I'd rather, pay a bit more than not have a fire station.
And when you say
hang on, slow down. Why do you
wait.
think So why is it that those extremes?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the document that was sent at the
But
bottom.
you're saying there's absolutely a middle ground. You can't go, you don't have to go from 94 to 420. There's a
Okay.
middle ground. And that doesn't mean that we don't have a fire department if we land in the middle ground.
Okay, so when you say 94 to 420, what do you guys mean? What are you talking about?
I'm looking.
She's talking about this document right here that says on this from Dusty Roads, it says that the current homeowner's value, if a value of a house is $100,000, the market value is $100,000, they currently pay $95.53. If this levy were to pass, that same house would have to pay $420 a
Yeah.
year.
That's what I was talking about.
I know what you're
That's a
talking
jump.
about. I just wanted you to say what you were talking about.
And I'd also like to point out that this isn't the only levy that, I mean, this is just fire that people are, that's a huge jump, and it's just fire.
So we have the fire chief.
I have a comment.
Oh, okay.
At the last meeting, when I calculated it off of Chief Strand's report, it was $111,000 per mill. And I suggested that 8 mil was enough to, to draw that fine line so we don't, out-tax the citizens with the fire levy, and then the police levy comes along and the citizens can't afford it. But now take the equation, and now instead of 111,000 times the 8 mil, take 150,000 per the auditor times the 8 mil and see what you got. You know what I'm saying? Now the 8 mil seems even more reasonable, because I think the 8 mil now would be, from what I looked at, $1,200,000. That's how much that would generate at the $150,000 per mil. And I'm understanding this is because house evaluations have gone up. So now, I mean, the 8 mil looks even more reasonable as far as the generation, because what you guys are telling us is that the next year, I think Ron said it, next year or year 2022, we're going to have to increase our police levy. So that's kind of what I'm looking at, what's reasonable burden for our citizens, because we're going to have 2 levies. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Yeah. Can I touch on this, Ms. Underwood?
Yeah, I was about to say, is that how that works? I didn't think that was how that works. So can you just explain how that works?
So here's the end goal. We looked at it from a problem standpoint. We identified the problems and came up with what it costs to fix those problems. And it came to 2.2 mils or $2.2 million to make a good faith effort. And believe me, the 12 mil that was proposed originally is the middle ground. It was 17 originally, if you remember, Ms. Underwood, and the task force. That is your full-time fire department, similar to like a Coleraine, a Green Township, City of Cincinnati, etc. We came way down to be responsible.
She fails. I keep being told all of the time, Erica, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's fire departments.
Yeah. So
okay, I'll let you finish. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm not starting with a number and then like a millage to the residents of burden. I was starting, here are the problems. What is it going to take to make a good faith effort to address those? And the reality is, in this city, we went from volunteer to part-time to the kind of abomination we have now of 3 full-time and all part-time, without ever doing anything other than a 0.5% earnings tax credit given back to the residents. We have the city has never invested in the fire department. So when you see this big jump, this big number,
we have a 3.2 mil levy. How can you say we've never invested?
A 3.2?
Isn't that
Well, I
what
mean-
it currently is? What is it
I
currently?
was, if you remember correctly, when I gave the presentation back in the day, that wasn't even a millage I proposed. That was something that Matt Waller came up with at the 11th hour.
That's
and it
not
was
my
just enough-
point. You
it was
said
just
the
enough to keep
city
the
has
lights
never
on.
done anything, and I'm disagreeing with the city has never done anything. That's my point.
Okay, well, they have, okay, 3.2
Whether
mils
we
was enough to
agree
keep-
on the amount or not.
Yeah, we
I'm
kicked the can and kept the
disagreeing on
lights
the
on.
principle.
Yeah, so we kicked the can then, kept the lights on, and kept going forward. And so the fire task force job wasn't to figure out another way to kick the can, to put a Band-Aid on more problems. It was come up with a comprehensive solution for long-term sustainability. That was the only goal. And it started out at 17 mils. That was your all full-time fire department, 6 people on duty every day. Enough to cover the lion's share of our runs and to meet the burden on the community, or the needs of the community that we saw. We said that was way too much. So then we came down to 15. That was what Miss Hall said should be the bare minimum. As the finance director, is the financial expert in that meeting, we still said that was too much. So then now here we are at 12. We've cut everything that's going to even make a dent in the fixing our problems is the 12, based on the old assessed valuation going back to 2020. Obviously, these new figures can change the matrix a little bit. I'm just being made aware of these. We did not have these at our disposal when we were coming up with the 12 mil need, but at the end of the day, we need a $2.2 million budget to accomplish the goals of the fire task force. So whatever millage that is, what is it, 1.5 mils, I think is what 12 mil generates under the most recent assessment. Plus 500,000 from the general fund is what was in there. And then we bring in 260, 270 from EMS billing. So yeah, we're a little north of what we need, but not that far north. The chop millage back to 8. So maybe we go down to 11, something like that, but I don't think we're going to be that shy of 12. And like I said, based on what Ms. Hall's recommendations are, we should be at 15. So, I mean, that's kind of where the numbers came from. It was to make a comprehensive solution to fixing problems for the long term. It wasn't about compromising and coming up with a Band-Aid here, a fix there to get us a few more years to kick the can. It was simply for a comprehensive solution. So that's all I have.
Yeah. I mean, my comment wasn't to be dramatic. I think it is important that we do kind of pass an extreme levy. I mean, you look at what Coleraine, what Cincinnati, what Springfield Township, what they're all paying their firefighters. Yeah, we may have a fire building. Yeah, we may have money going into a fire department. But if we don't have people who are willing to work for that cheap of the amount that we're paying them right now, then no, we're not going to have a fire department. So I know that sounds dramatic, but I don't think that it's in reality, that is a dramatic statement. That's just the truth at this point. We have to look for something sustainable. And yeah, it's going to be a big shock, but we have only, in our all time of our North College Hill City, we've only really helped our fire department this much when other places have helped it this much. So, I mean, I'm just kind of reiterating what Chief Phelps has already beautifully said, but I just wanted to kind of put my oomph in there too.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I think the only thing that I would actually like to add is that for all intents and purposes, there are 3 primary services that our city provides: police, fire, and public services. Basically the maintaining of the streets and the public spaces. We don't basically provide anything else. And by the way, even our public works to some degree has to maintain, like, even our parks at this particular point. What Chief Fells said cannot be understated. The idea here is not to try to guess or determine what the citizens think they may be able to afford. The purpose of the number, which, as he pointed out, was carefully investigated and researched was in order for us to provide a decent number of full-time personnel. It's not really even providing what would be optimal for us if we're going to actually fully staff a firehouse. It would provide for us an additional 6 full-time firefighters, which would allow us to have 3 full-time firefighters on for each shift, and then we would supplement with part-timers. Now, I want to emphasize something. Right now, the bulk of our fire support is coming from part-time firefighters. Many of these firefighters, in fact, most of the firefighters, are full-time firefighters in other municipalities, which means that if for some reason they are required to stay on, Chief Fells can tell you we actually had a couple of instances where we had to, in essence, beg or plead with other municipalities so that they would not recall their firefighters so that we would be able to staff our own house, our own firehouse. Because during COVID, they were actually saying that they were going to recall all of their full-time firefighters and have them dedicated to their municipality only. So these are things that we become susceptible to, and we're currently susceptible to them right now. So this is not something where this isn't a guess. The number was not a number that somebody just pulled out of thin air. This was something that was worked on by a task force over a several month period of time. And so I don't think that, to just simply say, in fact, I think it is actually doing a disservice not only to the committee, but also to what the actual need is by just simply saying, oh, I think maybe we can get by with, a lesser number. We're putting out what we're actually putting out to the community. This is what we would need in order to effectively staff our firehouse. And then we have to, and of course, we all recognize that we have to leave it up to the citizens to vote for that. But I really want to urge members of council to just strongly consider that this is what we need. The idea isn't, can we get it for a lesser amount? Because you won't get that. If we decide, or if council somehow decides, well, maybe we should go down to 8 mills, we're not going to get what we have already recommended. We won't get the additional 6 full-time firefighters. We won't even be able to actually even provide much of the capital purchases, that we would need. Mr. Fells can actually tell you right now, he's already put in for a couple of grants. He put in for a grant so that we could hopefully get another ladder, which is, that was over $600,000, if I remember correctly, Mr. Fells.
Yes, sir.
All right. So, I mean, there are major requests in, but the reason that we have to ask for the grants is because right now we don't have the capital to do what we need to do for our fire department. And quite frankly, again, there are a lot of areas within the building itself that actually need some capital repairs. Our current budget simply cannot handle that. So we would need the additional funds in order to make sure that we're providing not just for the personnel needs, but for the capital needs as well. Thank you.
Okay, so Chief Fells and Mr. Mosby, I just want to kind of, focus on one thing that, I'm hearing, and I'm not a budget person. So I will admit I went to law school because, I tried to be an accountant. It didn't work. Changed my major to English, never looked back. This is what I do. I am not a budget person. So all the pivot tables that you show me, I kind of look at them. I'm impressed. My eyes kind of glaze over. So I admit that I'm not a money person. This is not my wheelhouse. So I am hearing Miss Blythe say she has made some kind of calculation, and by her calculation, she comes up with the same number. Explain to me the difference between her calculation and your calculation.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, the difference is only $100,000, because if you take the number, the $111,992,000, and you multiply it times 12 mil, you get approximately $1,343,904. If you take the current from the auditor, you take the $150,000, you multiply it times the 8 mil, you get $1,200,000. So the difference right now is $100,000. I'm not saying that's anything to sneeze at.
Madam Chair.
All I'm saying is the 110,992 times the 12 mil, and if you take the current 150,000 times the 8 mil, there's $100,000 difference. That's all I'm saying. What I'm saying is being very simplistic about it. I'm not trying to, downplay all the research that has gone into that. I'm just saying these are the money amounts that I see from Chief Fell's report and now from the auditor's report. It's just basic math. That's all.
Okay, well.
That's all I'm saying. I see $100,000 difference
so you're
in the
saying that,
generation.
okay, so my understanding from Ms. Blythe is that you're saying the difference between 8 mils and 12 mils is $100,000. Is that right?
Yes, from the old figure of 111,992 to the new generation figure of 150,000 times the 8 mil. I mean, the bottom line is, like everyone is saying, the citizens are going to vote on this. So I'm not trying to downplay or cheapen anybody out. I'm just trying to make a point that now that we got the auditor's report, we're going to generate so much more per mil, almost $40,000 more per mil. That's all. That's all.
Okay, so now I want to follow up with the chief, because do you understand what her question is?
I do. I think it's maybe a little confused. So I'm looking at the auditor's report now, and they're not showing you the breakdown of what each mill equates to. Anybody else got that up in front of them? I'm trying to look through these 2 pages. I don't see where they break it down. But I think, long story short, our current levy generates. Ms. Hall, are you on here? I want to say it's like 100.
I'm here.
What is it? About $115,000, $120,000 per mill we actually realize.
I believe the new value, the old valuation was about 110. So Ms. Blythe was correct
so that's
with that. The new one, it's
Well,
probably
the new one is going to be more.
Yeah,
it's going to be more. So you got to remember, when the fire task force was going through this whole thing, we were basing it on a phone call down there, what assessed valuations were back in the spring of 2020. That's all the information we had. We took that number. We identified our problems, figured out what that cost us. We took that number and just started spinning the dial until the millage covered the expenses. And that's where, that's where originally 17 mills came from. Then we started dialing back the number of full-timers, numbers per day. And then we eventually found our way down to 12 mills. Obviously, this new revelation of the Dusty Roads attachment here, certification, does change that a little bit. I don't know if it's not going to take it from 12 to 8. It might take it to 12 to 11 and some change in a millage, but I don't know that it's that significant in the long run, based on the simple fact that, like I said, Ms. Hall, our financial expert, who knows the numbers far better than I, firmly believes that we should be at 15 mills and not 12, because the numbers are really tight. If you remember the spreadsheet that I gave you all, they are tight. There's not.
Okay, so I remember. I'm just trying to reconcile what everybody is saying, right? So, yeah. And I'm trying to address all of the concerns of the members of my committee, because I don't agree with any of you. I think we should do 17 mills, but that's where I am. However,
I'm agreeing with
I
that as
am,
well.
I get it. So I'm, so I am the queen of compromise right now, because, I think everybody's wrong. I think that's what it should be, but okay. So
I mean,
I'm just
Madam
trying to
Chair,
You can
understand.
put 25 mil on the ballot, but it's really down to the people, right?
I
It is.
understand that. I agree. And I'm not suggesting 25. I just think, based on, kind of, well, I get it. I get that we need to compromise, and I'm trying to work through, I'm trying to understand the numbers, because I'm not a numbers person. So I know I keep asking these questions. So when we're talking about 110 per mill, we're talking about, like, each million or mill generates $110,000. Is that what we're talking about? Is
In
that what that
Madam
means?
Chair, right, in the past, in the prior valuation, every mill that was collected by us for the purpose of whatever levy it was, would raise about $110,000 based on the property valuation at that time. So,
Okay.
so what you see in front of you is the most current valuation, and what that, and then the total sum that particular millage would raise in tax revenue. If 100% of everything was collected, that's what the auditors are telling us it would raise.
Okay, so how much, I don't see where it tells me how much it is per mill, is what,
Madam Chair, it's approximately 125,000. That is the new valuation, approximately that amount.
All right, then I'm confused.
So
So
basically,
oh, look, I
Larry is
confused the
saying
other
there's
lawyer.
well, she's saying there's like $110,000 difference between 4 mills. I mean, I've been sitting here quiet. That doesn't make any sense
that's
to me,
not
'cause
right. It's not
Yeah.
it
accurate.
seems
The-
like more like 400,000 or so.
It is.
Am I
That is
wrong?
exactly what I was going to say. It is a $400,000 difference between the 12 mil and what Ms. Blythe is proposing at the 8 mil. That means that's an additional $400,000 that the general fund will have to kick in addition to what it's kicking in now. That is not something we can afford. So that's the difference between the two.
But again,
I think,
$400,000 that you're throwing out there is based on this document that was put together. I mean, it doesn't have to be that way. It's, and I know you're going to jump all over me when I say this, but it's kind of a wish list of what we would like to have. I heard Ron throw out the word need, and I don't know that I agree with the word need. It's, some of it is a want. And I'm sorry, but that's the way I see it.
With all due respect, just looking at what Chief Falls has put together of just minimum staffing requirements. These are just minimum staffing requirements for a city our size and as busy as we are. You know, we are looking at approximately 2.2 million, roughly around there, somewhere between 1.7 and 2.2 million dollars that we need to have bare minimum staffing. Right now, we are below bare minimum. If one thing goes wrong, one person calls off sick, and we don't have enough people on board. Remember, Chief Falls stated that we had to have a police officer drive an ambulance just to save a child, you know. So I mean,
and you're
what we're
bringing up the
stating
one-offs.
here,
I mean, how
it's
often
not a
does a police
one-off. It is
officer?
not a
It
one-off
is.
when you only have 3 full-time firefighters on staff. This is
Happens
at
all the
any
time.
given time.
Policemen drive your equipment all the time?
We're down to 2 and 3 people all the time. Friday we were down to 3. You know, we had a fire at Clover Country Club yesterday. We had no units in service for several hours, and mutual aid was in here all night long. I mean, it happens all the time. We are a one emergency fire department. You can handle one call, and with 2,300 runs a year stacking up, the number of times we overlap is every day.
I also think it's important to, I mean, remember, we're here to represent the citizens. I don't think that like a citizen of North Collegeville is going to want to have that much risk. Like, I understand that they are one-offs, but as people representing the citizens, I personally, and I know my parents, I know my neighbors, aren't going to want that much of a risk where, oh, one thing can happen and we don't have any fire fire people, firefighters available.
I think what we also
Right.
need to do is to also maybe provide a little bit of additional background so that we could see why we're saying it's not just a want, but it is a need. I was speaking with Mr. Fells. Mr. Fells has been here with us for over 20 years, and he started off as a volunteer firefighter. When he was a volunteer firefighter, he would take a radio and a siren home with him, and if a call went out, then he would put his siren on, with the radio, and he would, with all the other volunteers, go to the location of the fire. At that time, when he started, he shared with me that we were probably in our city, we were averaging about 400 calls, about 200 calls a year, and about 40 of those were fire calls.
You were right, Mr. Mesby. It was about 400 to 500 a year when I started in early 1999.
All right. The point is, we're now at over 2,100 calls a year. Now that's over 6 a day on average. So we're not, this is no exaggeration when we're saying something has to be done. I mean, I know that Mr. Fells has been reluctant to saying it, and I totally respect it, but the bottom line is he is correct. What we're doing by pushing it off is trying to kick the can down the road. And so the reason that we're here is because this is how far we've kicked it to this particular point. If we put it off any further and we try to kick it more, when we come back, that number is going to be higher. I mean, that's just the bottom line. The inflation, the cost of training for individuals, that's one of the reasons that they had to stop the volunteer firefighters, because the training that was necessary for the volunteer firefighters had to be paid for. And so they had to be qualified in order to even serve as a volunteer firefighter. So we are in a very serious situation, and it's not, I don't like to use, drastic, and I actually appreciate, in this case, I appreciate what Ms. Zorb was saying. And I'm not looking at the one-offs. I'm actually looking at the total picture of what is happening. When, we can look at, for example, Christmas Day or New Year's, when basically we had no one that was here.
Right.
So it's not.
I was going to say that.
How
many times have I called you to get authorized to pay double time? Yeah.
This is not
Double
an
time,
infrequent occurrence. This is something that happens more frequently than we would like it for it to happen. So this is why the task force, the mayor commissioned the task force, and the task force came together over several meetings to put together a reasonable plan that would be able to provide us adequate staffing, for our fire station. The other option is, as someone said earlier, yes, we could say, okay, we won't do anymore. And then we could start looking to contract our services out to another municipality, whether it be Coleraine Township or Springfield Township.
Madam Chair.
That's expensive, man.
Madam Chair, I think I did make an error in that calculation. I think I saw the $1,500,000 generated and got 150,000, but the difference is $500,000. 125,000 times the 8 mil will be $1 million, but the 125,000 times the 12 mil will be $1,500,000, and that is what's on the report. And then I think the current budget that we have, don't quote me, I saw it on the budget, is about $650,000 a year. And we know that is not enough. I think Chief Fells can probably quote me, but I think it was the current budget is
1.2. I think 620 is probably what you're seeing of the general fund contribution, and the rest is coming from the 3.2 mil levy that's currently on the books.
Okay. Okay.
So, yeah, we operated like.
Thank you.
Since you're doing some calculations over there, Ms. Blythe,
Right now.
what would it be if it were 17 mils? I'm just curious, asking for a friend.
Should be.
Well,
That'd be 2.1 million.
All that aside, can I butt in here for a second?
Yes, absolutely.
$2,125,000 at the 17 mil.
You got your answer. So, for me, it's a little bit simpler. I mean, I get the big ask. I get the need. I mean, we could go in this long history of just fire service across a lot of communities, and people have been misled for how much it costs to run a fire department because many small communities were running on volunteer fire departments. Then they wanted to run on part-time, and it became no longer sustainable. So now many small communities have had to go to their voters and say, here's this huge hike that you need to vote for, because we've had this long history of undervaluing fire department services. I mean, it was really cool to be a firefighter once. No one even wants to do it anymore because no one wanted to pay firefighters. And that's just a societal problem, quite frankly. I think Brian can attest to that much greater than I am. So we are one of many small communities going through this. And I know that all the small communities, I'm sure, had the same debate. But the one thing that bugs me, and it's not even just about this fire department, it's about other things in this city too, is that we have this mentality that North College Hill doesn't deserve the best, even if it costs some money, and that we don't want to invest in it, and that, you know, we give up, or we're willing to do something just kind of good enough, rather than say, you know what, we're going to make the big ask, we're going to try to get people to invest in this thing. Why not? Is it a want to want to have an extremely functional, well-maintained fire department that if my heart is stopping, I'm going to be getting to the hospital and I don't have to worry about whether or not our fire department's on another call? Yeah, darn right, it's a want. I think it's a need, and I think it's a want. I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. And I can't stand the fact that Mount Healthy just passed a similar levy, and they were
17
able to
mil.
pull it off. 17 mil.
That's
They
what
didn't
they're
just
paying.
sit around with a defeatist attitude saying that Mount Healthy, oh, the voters will never go for it, we don't deserve this, and blah, 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 blah. They didn't sit around saying why it can't be done. Apparently, they figured out a way to rally each other, to go to the voters and have a better fire department, and ask the people to right the wrongs of not funding it enough in the past, and they pulled it off. And here we are doubting that we can do it. So either we're kind of saying we have no confidence in ourselves, or we don't believe that our people deserve something stellar. And I'm not comfortable saying either of those things. I'm confident to say that we could do this if we really put our minds to it and we educate people. We can pull it off, or die trying, and we should convince them that they deserve the best. Period. They don't deserve some duct tape together fire truck or a firehouse and a skeleton crew at all times. Period. That's it. For me, it's simple. It's a matter of principle. North College Hill, we have great people. They deserve great things. And yeah, we're going to ask them to invest in that. And I've got the guts to do it. I hope everybody else does. And that's where my heart is, and that's where my brain is.
Yep. Well said.
Chair, I
Well
wanted
said.
to just add real quickly, the reason my recommendation was no less than 15 mils is because anything less than that, we're probably going to have to go back to the voters within about a 5-year period to request additional levy monies. And to avoid doing that is why I said we need to go no less than 15 mils on this levy. I respect what the task force came up with, the happy medium, if you will, the 12 mils. But in reality, we will be right back in this place again in 5 years. We've done the numbers. We run out of money in 5 years, period. So that was my recommendation, just to avoid bringing this issue again, to our voters and saying we need more money. I just think we just need to go for the ask and just get our fire department up to speed to where it needs to be, comparable to other communities around us. That's all.
Ms. Hall, I have a question. So when you say we'll have to ask for more, do you mean we'll have to ask for a renewal or for a new?
Ma'am, we will probably have to ask for additional monies, because that amount, based on just, contract agreements with increases, just with capital needs, we'll have to put more burden on the general fund that right now, if you recall, we have 50% of the general fund, over 50% going to our police department right now. So there's not a lot that our general fund can do to assist our fire department any more than what it's already doing. So we will have to go back and ask for an increase, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and just to kind of add on to that too, I remember. Sorry, I was talking to Chief Fells a couple months ago, and I remember he mentioned something about how there wasn't really inflation put into the calculation. So, I mean, even with that being said, then we'll probably even have to ask for more than we're even thinking about. Yeah.
Right, because the cost of equipment and the cost of people increase as the years go down the road. So,
Mrs. Hall and also Mr. Mosby, I'm just trying to think ahead a little bit. What is the mill that we will need for the police department in 22 or 23? What is the current mill for the police, and what will we need in 2022 or 2023? We've discussed that. I think someone said the police need to go up to 6 mil or increase to 6 mil. Can you help me out with that, please?
Yes, the current police levy that we have is 4.9 mils. It is actually, of the 4 levies that we have, it is the highest millage. If we are going to, of course, it's a 5-year renewable, so we are going to have to go back to the voters to either renew at 4.9 or to ask for an increase. Now, I do want you to keep in mind, since you were asking the question, that is that we, for this particular year and during this last contract cycle, there were 3 consecutive 4% pay increases that were incorporated into the budget, doing exactly what Ms. Hall said, which is one of the reasons that it went over the 50%. So I don't know the exact number, but if we want to, keep it solvent, 4.9 will probably not be enough, but we haven't done a calculation on what would be basically necessary based on the current number of officers that we have, based on the current pay rates that we have, and the needs that we would have. Because right now, to be honest with you, we're not even, one of the things that we had discussed is we are not keeping an adequate capital program, particularly for our vehicles. So, we should probably be rotating vehicles probably at least 1 a year so that we can keep it on a 7-year cycle. And, we aren't doing it now. Fortunately, we did pick up an additional vehicle this year from Westchester. So they donated that to us. So that was, that worked out for us. But honestly, we probably need to be on about a 7-year cycle where we are, rotating the cars. So those are things that would have to be, taken into consideration when looking at what the next levy amount is going to be.
I just want to add
Okay,
that
thank
the current,
you.
Ms. Blythe, I just want to add that the current police levy is, I want to say that we're running out of money there because we've had to shift a couple of officers off the levy because of the 4% pay increase that they contractually were entitled to. So while we cannot sit here and give you an exact number of what that needs to increase to, I can say that 4.9 is not going to be sufficient in upcoming years, just based on trying to make the numbers work for 2021.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
There was something that Matt Miller-Novak said that comparing us to Mount Healthy, and it kind of didn't sit well with me. Because let's face it, Mount Healthy residents voted down the joint fire department, the same as North College Hill did. North College Hill came out stronger, but Mount Healthy voted it down too. But the only way that Mount Healthy passed that 17, wasn't whatever they did. They had to do that on a special election. And I was trying to look it up real quick and I didn't make to it in time, but I think that passed with like 230 people voting for it. So I personally find that a little deceptive on their residents that they did that on a special election, and 230 people determined an enormous permanent tax levy for their citizens. And that's my opinion on that.
Well, it was actually, Ms. Zorb, it was actually over 500 people that voted, but yes, they had 260 people that voted for the levy. It was a special
That's
election.
what I said. That about 200 and some people voted for it. So those are the people that determined it. Yes, that's what I said.
Yes, okay, right. Over 500 came out to vote, though. I just wanted to make sure that was clear. And no matter what, that's what's going to happen most of the time. That same thing happened for the Joint Fire District. There was a very small amount of people, less than 10% of the total district came out, and they were the ones that determined that we would not have a Joint Fire District. So, I mean, on the flip side of that, we can look at that. When it was voted down, that was an opportunity for us to not only shift the fire department to a separate fire district, but also the $600,000 that is being used by the fire department right now would have been money that would have been able to revert back to the general fund. So, I mean, there is a cost one way or the other for anything that we do. In that case, that was a cost for us, now, fortunately, with the plan that we have, that we've presented to council, there is about $100,000 that can go back to the general fund. As Mr. Fells had said, the rate that we're looking at would result in a need of about $500,000 from the general fund as opposed to the $600,000.
Well, I mean, in the simplest terms, a special election is not a secret election. I mean, they're held in public, they're held at churches, they're held at schools or whatever place hosts them. And it doesn't matter at the end of the day. I'm not suggesting we use a special election, but I'm suggesting we believe in what we do. And we believe that our fire department and our people and our public safety is important enough to throw all of our guts behind it and do it. And if that's the desire to have a great fire department instead of one that is like bubble gum in the hole in the Hoover Dam, and to go all in, then we go all in. I don't care if it's a special election. I don't care if it's a general election. I believe our people are important enough to invest in. I believe our people are important enough to convince them to invest in themselves. And I think our public safety is the most important thing that we even do here. It's the only thing we really can do. And we need the money. And one of the biggest problems is that when this happened 7 years ago, an arbitrary number was thrown out, was 3.2. It wasn't near enough. And here we are again. And we're about to make the same mistake again from not learning from the past. I think we are entitled to an awesome fire department with a building that functions properly, with vehicles that function properly, and enough people to answer 2 emergencies. If that is some stupid, selfish desire, so be it. But I think that's what we're entitled to. The point of Mount Healthy is whatever they did, they believed in it, they went for it, they got it. Special election, once again, is not a secret one. There's nothing deceptive about it. That's just hyperbole. It's a special election. It happens in public. It's published. It's noticed. It exists in public. Either way, I don't care when we do it. We should do it. We should throw into it. We should invest into it. It's a great city, great people, deserves a great fire department, period. That's my point.
And honestly, I think in addition to that too, I think it's kind of, I mean, I know that not just you, Mary Jo, but I kind of feel like I'm talking to you, but I know that everybody else is here too. I know that we've all obviously like talked to other people in our neighborhoods and to our families and to our friends. And I know that it is a lot of money. And I mean, I think everybody knows North Cultural is a community that houses a lot of low income families or low income people. And yeah, I do think that's something that we have to look at realistically, but I think for us to make that decision for our citizens to say, oh no, you guys can't afford this, so we're just going to make it cheaper and we're just going to give you a less efficient fire department. I don't think that's fair for us to make that decision for them. I think as a council, we should instead put forth on the ballot what the best suggestion is, what the most sustainable suggestion is, and what the safest suggestion is, and then let the people make that decision for themselves instead of us saying, oh, you're too poor to afford this. I know nobody's saying that exactly. Obviously, that's hyperbole. But I think that that's still a decision that the citizens need to make and not us as, 6 people sitting in a Zoom room.
So what isn't hyperbole is that I'm staring at a report from 2018 and the median household income is $41,841. That's not hyperbole. That's fact.
Madam Chair, I'm trying to I'm very simplistic, sorry. I'm just trying to get a win-win situation for everybody. Now that I'm looking at it, I'll say this. 1.2 million was enough for Chief Fells on his previous report. If you take 9.5 mil, you will get that 1.2 million per year that he needed in his report. And then my thing is, when the police levy comes up, I want the citizens to have enough to support the police levy because both levies are important. I'm not trying to play the citizens cheap. I want to present something where we generate enough money, the people accept it, and they can afford it. I'm not trying to play the citizens cheap, saying they can't afford a good fire department, but I'm trying to make it balanced. If we have a 9.5 mil, it will generate the 1.2 million for the fire department. And then if we need a 6 or 7 mil for the police in the next year or two, hopefully we can document it, reason it. So I'm trying to make a win-win for all 3 of these groups. Enough money for the police and the fire, and a reasonable amount that our citizens can afford. And I'm not trying to say that we have poor, broke down citizens, but I'm just trying to do something where everybody's funded and it's reasonable and we can survive. That's all I'm saying. I'm just trying to level it out. But my little phone calculator says 9.6 mil gets you at $1.2 million. I mean, that is, if that's what they need to operate. I'm not trying to,
Where's that number come from? I don't know where the 1.2 comes from.
I saw, when I was looking at your report, when we thought that the millage would be 111,992 times the 12 mil, on your report I saw like $1,250,000. I saw that on the report that you emailed us.
That's what we currently operate at right now. Our total budget, general fund, levy, and EMS billing is $1.2 million.
Right,
Yeah.
9.2 will keep us exactly where we are.
That gets us exactly where we are today.
Right. That changes nothing.
I thought there was more money coming from different funds.
The general fund is.
I'm confused because I saw the budget for $652,000 on the budget sheet. Right. And then I saw the 1.25 million on your report.
Yeah, that's the total of the general fund, EMS billing, and the levy all together is the 1.25.
Okay.
That's everything together. But yeah, the general fund is 650. Then it's 260 for EMS billing, then 320 roughly for the current fire levy.
So my question to you is, maybe I misread your report, but what exactly, I'm trying to figure out what is the dollar amount that you hope to achieve from the levy. That's what I'm just trying to break it down very simple.
We need $2.2 million to accomplish what the task force said we needed to address the problems that we identified. 2.2. So that doesn't all have to be out of the fire. That all from this levy. Some of it will still come from the general fund. Some of it is still being raised from EMS billing revenue, but the rest will come from the levy.
Do you also have yearly grants that bring in money? Any type of grants that bring in money?
Only if we're awarded them. I apply all the time. We just applied for 3 FEMA grants last week. Those are not guaranteed, and we've gotten, one in a decade. As far as the big dollar FEMA grants, we get smaller ones. Again, they're grants. They're not guarantees, and you can't build a 24-hour emergency service on them. They're great if you get them, and if we get the ones we just applied for, yeah, we can take our levy beyond 5 years. If we don't, then like Ms. Hall said, in 5 years we'll be right back asking for a renewal, at the very least, if not an increase. It would all depend on property values at that time, what we need to ask for. But one guarantee will be inflation will hit us over the 5-year period, and we'll need more money to operate.
Okay, thanks for explaining that. Appreciate it.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, so I think that I followed along with everything, and I really appreciate everyone and the input from everyone. I think that it was I think this was a productive discussion. We all do agree that we want the best fire department. I think that we're trying to figure out what our levy is going to look like still, but we all agree that we need one. I think we all agree to that. We're probably not quite on the same page with the amount. So, you know where I stand. And I also want to give a shout out to Chief Fells for the fantastic job that he continues to do for our fire department.
Thank you.
He goes above and beyond all of the time. He more than earns every penny that we pay him. And by the way, I keep asking why we don't pay him more, but I'm not even going to get on that soapbox right now about pay parity and that kind of thing. I'm just saying that, here is a man who, without asking anybody or without anybody directing him to do that, he goes out and actively seeks equipment and grants and anything that he can do to make his fire department better. And when you walk into the fire department, it is neat, it is clean, it is organized. There is always somebody there to answer the door when I just stop by. And, anytime that I go there to answer questions, I wish he had an elevator, but it's okay.
That's what 17 mils would have got us.
Yeah. He always waits for me to make my way up the stairs, but it's always neat, always clean, always, he just does. I just want it to be known that he's doing an absolutely fantastic job with the resources that he has, and he absolutely is willing to answer any questions from anybody. He's very, he's an open book about where the money goes and where the money is spent. And there's, I don't walk in there and see, any kind of extra anything. I mean, they're not over there, spending money on things they shouldn't be spending money on. This is just, so that's my kind of piggyback to what Mr. Miller Novak was saying. And, and I'm certainly not trying to do a special election. I want it to be in November, but I also want to be clear that, we want to give them what they need. So I just want us, whatever we come up with, because, I want to make sure we give them what they need. We know that what they have right now is not sufficient. So we need to do right by our citizens. And I know that if I call 911, I want somebody to show up and I want them to get there, and I don't want them to have to call around. I don't want to wait for Springfield Township. I don't want to wait for Coleraine Township. No offense, but I want the fire department that's within that 1.8 square mile radius to get to my house and help me or whatever. Okay, so I'm going to stop with my, obviously, Okay, so it is 8:32 and I want to be
Miss Underwood, may I say some of
Absolutely.
my
Sure.
closing comments?
Sure.
So it is clear, I've made it abundantly clear that I do not support the 12 mil. And the reason I don't support that is because I don't think it's going to pass. That's my gut. And then I think we're going to be scrambling, and I think it's going to be that whole fallback plan and whatever. That's my opinion. I'm entitled to my opinion. Everybody on this panel is entitled to their opinion, right? So but the other point that I want to be crystal clear in making is I have never, ever, ever once thought that our fire department employees do not deserve more money. I have said that. I have said it repeatedly. That's why when I say there might be want in this, the want is not the salary part. The want is, I don't know, this little pink and purple area maybe. I don't know. I don't have it memorized. But my point is, I do want good people. I want to maintain good people. And I don't want there to be any other opinion of my opinion out there. So I want to make that clear.
Thank you. Actually, thank you. Thank you for saying that. I really do appreciate you saying that. I think that if I think that we can do it. I really do. I think we can do 17 I think we can convince people to do 17, but I also understand that this is about compromise. And what I would just ask of this committee and my fellow council members is for us to just really just consider what actually Mary Jo just said, that they do a good job. And we just need to figure out how to make sure they have what they need, and that's all I'm asking. So that being said, I also want to be mindful of our deadlines, and the fact that I haven't convinced you all to do away with that summer session stuff yet. That's coming. So I would like to move this to the council agenda. However, I still want to continue to discuss this in our committee. Does anybody have a problem with that?
No, I don't. If that's what you want to do, I'm game. Well, fine.
I would like to look at taking into consideration the additional money that, how do I say this? It looked to me that we would get more from as income than was originally thought. Is there any way to reduce, like what is that middle ground? Is there a way to reduce it 1 mil to still meet that same anticipated money? That's what I would like to look at.
That's what I was pretty much bringing up, is that it went from the 11992 to the 125,000. That's all I was saying. Thank you.
And what I would just ask, and I think Chief Fells is certainly willing to come and talk to us. And if we need to have more committee meetings, I think that, maybe that's possible. Maybe we can do that so that because I'm just gonna be honest with you guys. I keep asking questions about how the numbers work because I'm not a numbers person. If you want to know the elements of aggravated murder, I got you. I can explain that hands down, but the numbers, I have to ask a lot of questions, especially because we're throwing a lot of numbers around. I just want to make sure that we're doing what we need to do. And Ms. Hartman, you have been noticeably silent through all of this, but I like to hear your voice.
I've been listening. That's pretty much what I have to say on that. My concern is so many. I'm for the fire department. I want this. We need this. How are we going to get the people to vote for it? Biggest thing. At the end of the day, they're the ones that get to choose. So can we get out there with blowhorns and tell them, you know, when grandma falls down the steps and kid gets hit by a car and grandpa's having a heart attack, somebody might not be there? What do? Can we go to the businesses, the little local barber shops, put out flyers, talk to people, go in? I don't know. How do we know they're all locals? How do we not know? Just get the word out there.
Yeah, that is on our plan of attack. Yeah, it's just a matter of getting this. With that plan of attack, when we get out there, we got to be able to make some promises and assurances to people. And that comes from the millage that you guys set. You know, I don't want to go out and promise the world, and then all of a sudden the millage goes from 12 to 8.
No, right.
Because none of that happens. So the first part of that is you all setting what that priority is, developing the fire department insurance policy, so to speak, for the residents. And then once that's concrete, then we can go out and start selling what they're going to get for the millage. So
I mean, we can't do it by being defeated. I mean, we certainly can't do it by saying we can't do it. I mean, that's like a thing, right? You know, I mean, it's not going to be easy. I mean, I just have to say that. I understand. I'm not suggesting anybody doesn't care about the fire department, but I don't know that we understand. You know, I don't know everybody's varying degrees of understanding the gravity of certain situations. I don't, you know, our fire department building's not, it's terrible. My understanding is there's carbon monoxide issues. We've got a fire department that has carbon monoxide issues in the building. To me, that's sick. You know, we could say that we care about our fire department, but we need to act like it, and we need to invest it and be willing to make hard sales for it. You know, and you know, theoretically, we all believe in it. We all care about it. We all want it. But, you know, yeah, I mean, your answers to your question, in my opinion, Ms. Hartman, is everything you just said. Yes, we got to do that stuff. You know, we have to convince people. You know, we're not allowed to use city funds to campaign, but we're allowed to use my mouth. We're allowed to use your mouth. I mean, we're council people. We're allowed to campaign. We're allowed to convince people to believe in the agenda that we're putting up and our policies and to back them. We're allowed to do that. Are we allowed to use city funds to electioneer? No, but we're allowed to use our mouths. So, yeah, we got to reach out to the business community. We have to reach out to people in the community, and we have to believe it, and we have to get behind it. And if it doesn't work, then we can come up with a plan B and throw into that, you know?
correct. Yeah. I'm willing to plant that flag and die on that hill. I think it's long overdue, and it's time we take the chance instead of, you know, having a defeatist attitude and coming up with half measures.
And I mean, what I'm hearing from everybody is just a unified front. I think when you come at anything, especially something this large and this important, with kind of a split council, I mean, obviously you're going to have a split community. And I'm not saying like everybody change your opinion to match mine, but I mean, I think it is important that we all kind of make a decision and we stick to it, and we back up Chief Fells, and we back up Ari, and we back up the fire committee and what they all put together. I think that that's really important. And then, so I'm sorry, I'm going to jump back a second. Ms. Hall, would you mind kind of like crunching the numbers or whatever you do with numbers to see what the new like proposed number would be to match like that? You know what I mean? Do you get what I'm asking you?
Yeah, I can work with Chief Bells on that. I believe he might already have some of those, but we can
off
work
the top of my
together.
head, I think we basically would cut back to from 12 mils to 11 or 10.8.
Okay.
I don't know it.
If that's a number that you and Ari, I'm sorry, you and Ms. Hall are comfortable with, then I would be comfortable.
Well,
I will tell you, Miss Hall is not
let me
comfortable
tell
with that.
you right now, I am not comfortable with that. I just don't feel like it's the right thing to tell citizens that we have a problem. This will fix our problem. And then 5 years later say, hey, you remember that problem 5 years ago? We're right there again. We need more money again. I feel like we need a permanent levy at 15 to 17, minimum 15. I mean, even at 15, I think it was like about 7 or 8 years later, we would probably need either the general fund to front up a little more money or something like that. But I cannot in good conscience recommend anything less than 15, just because we'll have to go back and ask for more, just in a few short years. So
yeah, there's your answer. That's the expert.
I'm sorry, but that's,
I'm relying on it.
that's all
No,
I
I appreciate your honesty. I'd
Yeah.
much rather have an
Yeah.
honest answer than,
Yeah, she's
Madam
far
Chair.
better at this than I. Like I said, I just came up with the problems and the cost of fixing them, and she came up with what it's going to take to do that. And I have to go with her.
Madam
Mr.
Chair.
Mosby, I hear your voice there.
Yes, thank you. I think there's something else that needs to be said here too. I think there's a reason, and a very good reason, for a 5-year levy. I believe that it's a good idea because it does make all of us accountable to the voters. And we would then have to go back to the voters and say, did we do with the money what we promised that we would do? Now, in this case, and I have said this before, and I will continue to say it, Mr. Fells had, in essence, on behalf of the fire department, promised that with the current 3.2 mils, that we would be able to get 3 to 5 full-time firefighters. He did that. And I'm going to tell you, it isn't just getting 3 people and hiring them and them staying on board. You have to interview a lot of people. There are going to be people that don't make it. And then you have to turn around and do the hiring process again. At this particular point, he has maintained the 3 people and has proven to the community that we could be trusted with the 3.2. In this case, what we are saying is we need more than just the 3.2 in order for us to provide the necessary full-time firefighters. In this case, we are saying 12 mils. Now, if he's saying that, then I say that we trust what not only Chief Fells said, but also what the task force said, which, by the way, the task force was made up of a variety of group of people. So this isn't just 1 or 2 people making a decision. You had council members that were on the committee, you had citizens in the community that were on the committee, and then you had some former members of council that were on the committee as well. So we got a diverse group from the community to come together and you were on the committee, Madam Chair, so you know that what I'm saying is true. And so there was a compromise, as you pointed out. Some people said as low as 7, others said as high as 17. There was a compromise and said 12 would be able to achieve what we need to do. And Mr. Fells took the time and basically calculated out what would be necessary in order for us to provide these 6 additional full-time firefighters. And that is what we need. That isn't a want. That is what we need in order to fund and staff our own fire department, which, by the way, the people have said that's what we want to do. We want our own fire department. And so now we need to back him and the committee and say they can be trusted with 3.2. They can be trusted, and we'll say can they be trusted with 12? I believe the answer is yes. And so if that's the case, if I believe that he can be trusted with 12, that's what I'm going to push for or recommend as an administrator. And I'm not going to change or budge from that.
Okay, so I think that we still have quite a bit of discussion that we need to to have, so we can have a unified front. Chief, I'm hoping that I can convince you to come to a few more meetings with us, because I understand that we're under a time crunch here, so we've got to kind of get this figured out. So maybe I'll try to ask if the members of this committee would come together for, an additional meeting next month, so that we can kind of, further discuss this, because again, I do want to be respectful of your time. With that, I know that we did have some other things on the agenda, but it is 8:47. Is there any burning need, anything that someone just wants to talk about before we adjourn this evening?
No, Madam Chair, not at all.
Okay, so what I plan to do, just to make sure everybody understands, is I am going to refer this to the council agenda, because we have to have those 3 readings done. But I am going to schedule an additional meeting for this committee in April, so that we can make sure that we agree on what that millage is going to be. I don't want us to kind of go into a council meeting and, have a motion to amend and we haven't really agreed on the number. I want us to agree, or do our best to try to agree. Okay, so if nobody has anything else, then I will go ahead and say that the meeting is adjourned. It is 8:48. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Erica.
Good night.